Thank you so much, Matteo, for the warm introduction. Thank you all for being here. Needless to say, it's an honor being able to present one of the main contributions I thought my thesis was about, which is about the microvelocity of money in Ethereum, which is, of course, a topic, one of the main reasons for studying the crypto, beside the many fascinating options offered by DeFi, FinTech, smart contract, and all the kind of amazing possibilities crypto are offering, is as well having an economic system which is completely transparent for us, when we can really see all the detail of the transaction happening. So beside the pure algorithmic cryptography achievement, we have as well as an economic perspective that could be very much insightful as well for other more traditional branches of economy, like digital payment, digital currency, and so forth. So, velocity. My main research question during this article, whose conclusion I'm now going to present you, was about what is the role velocity play in account-based crypto, such as, but not only, Ethereum. Yes, now I can expect a question. What is velocity? How do we define velocity? Velocity, or it's a concept that can be defined in many ways, according if we are in physical branches, if we are in economical branches, if we are a fleet, like the girls competing here. But in economics, if we according to the Fisher law, it's one of the fundamental macroeconomic variables bounding together the monetary mass M, price P, the economic output Q, and the velocity of money V. This is one of the foundational contribution from Irving Fisher, and we see that the price for the economic output are supposed to balance with the monetary mass and the velocity of money. Of course, we know how much complex is economic system. Here we are at a university, we have cafeteria, we have to pay fees for tuition, for enroll. Outside there are shops. How we can keep track on a real economy of all this value, of all this velocity? We can't. That's why we usually take aggregate velocity, proxy measure, to understand how fast the economy is going, if our velocity is increasing. Because it could have consequences of prices. And of course on the monetary mass, the central banking have to issue or have not to issue. But if we tackle it just from a data science perspective, and if we consider the crypto ecosystem independently from what makes it a crypto system, we can have a different granularity on this topic. Instead of just analyzing the aggregate measure, we can go to the individual contribution of a single agent into the overarching economic system. Like we can ask how much the velocity of this fleet is concurring to the overall velocity. What does it mean, velocity, in such an aggregated context? Somehow the concept of microvelocity is a matter of scale. When we think about temperature, it's easy to measure a temperature. If we have fever, we have to measure a temperature. But atomic level, we know all the particles have different temperatures that somehow average on a meso and on a macro scale. But if we look at the micro scale, we can see, hey, what's really happening inside this economic system. So we can somehow disaggregate and look at the individual contribution of every agent. So, since this is a novel approach of microvelocity, I'll try to introduce exactly how we computed it and what are the results that took place, that we could measure. Imagine I got Alice received 5 Ethereum at block 10, and this receive another 10 Ethereum at block 20, and she's giving 15 Ethereum to Bob at block 30. What is her overall contribution to the velocity of this system, measured by her mass? At block 10, we see that the Ethereum she received at block 10 are gone in block 30. So it means every unit of money has to be divided by 20. So they have an individual contribution of 0.25. But the Ethereum she received at block 20 has a higher relative velocity contribution because it's given in a shorter time frame of 10. And if we sum up the contribution we got an average contribution of a velocity of 1.25 ether per block. That's of course a simplification. Nobody will really give in 20 block. Yes, you could give 20 block in Ethereum such amount, but let's say if we have that discretized quantity of money, that's how we can contribute. That's how we can compute it. I'll leave some time for the question at the end of the talk. So that's even mean we can measure the absolute contribution to the velocity we have per actor. And we see how concentrated, how centralized is the velocity contribution of every individual agent. We see that the first 5 agents are somehow taking more than 60% in a single block of every velocity. The phenomenon of concentration is one of the most fascinating topics in crypto because we could see what happened to economic system where no regulations outside the algorithmic one take place. And I have to say the level of concentration we see from any possible point of view, it's quite impressive. But we have other findings as well I like to share with you. We can measure what is the mean holding time of every unit of money. And we see that hodlers gonna hold. We see how skewed to the right are the amount of ether. It's quite an illiquid supply. We see that it's mostly moved in near, if not more, even more than near a logarithmic scale. We see how much people are tend to hold and not using it really as a real economic system. It behaves much more than an investment and really as a currency in the, like francs or traditional currency, fiat currency. I have to precise, the data set we had to manage to do this study was quite huge because it was not only a transfer, was the payment of fees, was the smart contract, transaction rejection, and so forth. So it was a bit complicated. It sounds easy to get amount of data you need to do this kind of computation, but it was quite challenging for me. So basically the data set ended in 2029, 2021. But I mean, it could be extended and still it's a 6-year time frame of research, from 2015 up to 2021. Another finding that if, it's very interesting, if we divide MVE, if we divide here what Alice is sending by her balance, we got the pure amount of velocity of every single unit of money. Like the atom of economic matter, how fast is it moving? And what we find is quite interesting, and this value, of course, is highly concentrated when we don't take balance in account, but it's even highly uneven if we divide by the wealth. And we find out that the distribution equates to a power law. This is quite fascinating, and we ask ourselves that if we don't take in account balance, how could it be that we have a power law even there? We try to investigate if some sort of Brownian motion inside the matter, this kind of, by following SORNet, if this kind of distribution could arise. We tried different mixing method, because the one we tried is LIFO. Yeah, it's last in, first out. No, yeah. First fee is FIFO, but we try a random mixing with LIFO and as well an equal mixing of two, and the results were consistent. The velocity doesn't change, stay power law distributed. And if we compare to the traditional way we have to measure Fisher velocity, and that's what makes our approach fascinating, I'll try to explain this slide a bit. If we take the traditional way, so we measure the transaction by the monetary supply at a time, and we have our approach where we know every individual balance and we take care of every individual transaction, we get that our way to measure velocity that you see here in blue is much more accurate in detecting spike. Here you see we plotted it against the price of Ethereum in dollar. You see the spike and you see how much more nuanced is our analyzed V. The very good thing we see, of course, is this value is right censored, because I don't know if I'm gonna spend my unit of money one block after the cutoff data point of my data set. So of course it's right censored, the time frame. But we see that the error of our approach has a prediction value. And we are trying to understand if in a real economic system we could use the microvelocity approach to predict inflation in real economic system. The microvelocity approach is something Carlo Campaiola, Claudio Tessone have been working on, and we are further improving this method. I'll share the source code to plot it, to extract this value at the end of the talk. So we see with our approach we could be in a possibility to have a prediction value for the future, a predictive value for the future. Another very interesting finding, in my opinion, is how much does this correlate with the token velocity, with the overall token ecosystem. One of the main focus of my doctoral thesis was the diversity of the token ecosystem. I mean, I was fascinated by the possibility of investigating 1 million of tokens, which right now we are, in 2024, May 2024 are 1,100,000 different tokens. Think to it, think of the multitude, think of the many economical experiments you can have with such diversity. And you can analyze it in an aggregate way, which fascinated me. So I tried to see how the average velocity of token ecosystem compare with the one of Ethereum. The problem is, of course, we are talking about very different scales somehow, and the box plot is quite uneven, if you see, but still you can see that when the token specification was issued in 27, ERC20, ERC721, you can see how somehow it correlates with the overall velocity, or average velocity of this multitude of tokens. We analyzed 1,000 of them here. Another results we have is, since we were in the past and we still are a network science department, we try to analyze how does it compare with the network topology of the transaction network. Network science is a branch of complex system that study how the relationship between complex system and agent. In this case, transaction network. If I send money to somebody, I have a relationship with him. If he send him to another one, you can have multiple ways to model it. It can be direct and indirected, multi-layer. In our case, we just plotted a weekly graph of transaction. We try to extract the topology of the network, and we find out a core periphery structure of this network. Like you have a core, where there is a high number of transactions between the core, is strictly connected, plus you have the branches, which are quite peripheral to the network. And what we found is that velocity is extremely concentrated at the core of the network when we take weekly snapshots. It means most of the action happen inside this core, and the periphery contribute not very much to that. This is true even if we take the pure velocity of money, so if we divide by our balance, or if we take, we don't take this in account. It's even more unequal if we don't divide by the balance at that moment. Of course, one of the biggest advantage of Ethereum is not just telling, hey, this address is doing something, but let's see what that address is. Is it a smart contract? Is it known to belong to an exchange, to belong to any other entity? And so we use the labels from Etherscan to understand how much who are these top contributors. Not many of them are smart contract. The vast majority are EOA. Funny things, if we don't divide by monetary balance, we find that exchange contribute like 56% are in weekly top 10, or if we take weekly snapshot and we see how much often they appear in it. Of course, it doesn't sum up because they could have multiple labels, so In this case, Binance is both in exchange and Binance. So that's why, but you see how much it's concentrated into exchange, which play the lion's share in contributing to the overall velocity of the system. While with normal, other others not really contributing by much. What I find fascinating, but look at the scale. Here we have more than 60%. If we divide by the balance, what we obtain is mining. The addresses usually associated with mining are doing big part of the moving big part of the velocity. But for if you see they contribute 3%, 2% is nothing comparable to this one, to the other bit. And I like the label criminal, by the way, which tell a lot. And the conclusion of this article are going to be published. They've been accepted. We just have a problem with my mail address, so I can't really give the license at the very end. On a European Journal of Data Science, the source code for computing velocity, the way we did on other kind of crypto asset is available here. It has been extended to token or to any other currency you might wish for. And what is our main consequence? We see that velocity emerges as a property of folder as an aggregate. We don't see a thing like velocity of money per se. It's always velocity of the holders, which sum up from the micro scale to a meso scale and to a macro scale. And we really see it arising. And we wish for the future to understand why it's power law distributed and how this could explain the phenomena of concentration and aggregation, the Matthew effect we see in many economical systems. This said, I want to thank the co-author, Dr. Carlo Campaiola from City College London, and Professor Claudio Tessone, which you probably already know. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Francesco. Are there any questions from the room? Yep. 1 second.
Hello.
Hi.
So one thing that I was wondering is how about these MEV bots and in general bots that clearly are just equalizing liquidity and trades on chain? Are you categorizing them separately, and if so, how much do they actually make up for all of the transactions on the Ethereum network?
That's a very good question, and I have to admit I haven't encountered them in my computation up to 2021 because they weren't labeled. There are many possible reasons which could make a very good follow-up research question on this article, but I haven't encountered them specifically, but it's a very good point.
And maybe a follow-up question on this. I think what would be interesting is also to see maybe you find a way how you're able to label humans, because exchanges, everything is all programmatic. And then to see how humans actually play a role in this velocity discussion.
Another approach we tried in a different paper was using ETH name and to see which one were had a reserved name on the Ethereum naming system. But of course, even this is not per se guaranteed that it's an end user. A very useful approach to such huge amount of data, we're talking terabytes, would be having a more LLM machine learning approach to categorize them, because sometimes you're just overwhelmed by the sheer number of information. Like I mentioned, this 1 million token, how we categorize them. Even if you read the white paper, sometimes you just can't make sense of them or to categorize them properly. So labeling, it's quite a rough first measure, I agree with you. I think really AI will help us in doing this step further, seeing what are the real agents. Yes?
One more question, yeah.
And how is the velocity in Ethereum compared to the velocity in real life? Some of the same, is it different? Did you compare it?
Carlo is doing some experiment in Japan about this. So personally didn't compare it with another real economic system, but I think this is a research question my colleagues are following right now. So I can't tell you more, but I would like to.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Francesco. We have 5 minutes break until the next talk, which will be a live coding talk.